Joining me now is Hedieh Mirahmadi. She's been with us before, and she's with us tonight, and she's going to be with us on, what is that, October 2nd, Logan? Our conference starts October 3rd and 4th. That's a Friday and Saturday night. So that Thursday night, obviously, will be the 2nd of October. She'll be our keynote banquet speaker for our foundation. You need to get your tickets, folks. We only have seating for the conference for 350 people. And it's here in Collierville, Tennessee, about 30 minutes from downtown Memphis. By the way, Collierville and Germantown, which are right next to each other, have been voted the two first and second safest towns in the entire state of Tennessee. I mentioned that because poor Memphis gets a lot of bad press. But like I say, it's a safe community unless you plan to go over to Orange Mound or into Fraser, then you're asking for trouble. But generally, most of the crime is bad people doing, turf warfare and bad drug deals or whatever with each other. But that's in every major city. But we're not going to be in Memphis. We're going to be in Collierville, Tennessee, right up next to Germantown, which were both voted the two safest towns in Tennessee. So come to Memphis, folks. And I think you'll be safe enough if you wanted to take in Graceland, which why would you not want to take in Graceland? I think we might need to take our cameras soon to Graceland, Logan, and do a little documentary on that as well. Some of you are saying, please don't do that. Others are saying, yeah, Elvis. XAI, yeah, we got to get a tour through X, don't we, with Elon? I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. But anyway, I digress. Go back to our website, worldviewstore.com. Get your tickets for our banquet on Thursday night with Hedieh as a keynote speaker, and then the conference itself on the 3rd and 4th, that Friday night and Saturday. Again, we only have seating for 350 people for the conference itself. So, again, please get your tickets. Come join us. Centrally located. We got FedEx here, we got International Paper, we got a lot of big corporations. Why? Because it's centrally located. So you can easily drive or fly into our airport, which is a medium-sized airport. Very easy to get through. By the way, just renovated, remodeled, beautiful, beautiful. I wouldn't know because I fly, but I do pick up people there and drop them off. All right, Hedieh joins us. Hedieh, welcome back to the broadcast. Looking forward to having you with us at our Thursday night banquet, October 2nd this fall.
I am really looking forward to it. And by the way, if you're taking votes, I would love to see Graceland.
Oh, really? Well, Logan,
yes,
she might
I've
need to
never
come
been.
in. Oh, well, are you an Elvis fan?
Yeah, sure. Who isn't?
Well, I don't know. I get some pushback from some people. I'm like, how can you not like Elvis? But yes, I'm a big Elvis fan. So anyway, well, if you want to come in early, we'll gladly take it. Melissa's never been to Graceland either. I've got to get her there. So maybe we could do that together.
Yes.
But wow, see, I like her even more now. I know she likes Elvis. The question is, do you like the younger Elvis or the older Elvis?
I actually saw Elvis in Vegas with my parents. So that was, of course, the older Elvis. But I just love his music. I think it's a great part of American history.
Yeah, it's Americana is what it is.
Yes.
I want to, before we get into President Trump, the leader of Syria and all that, Blaze Media has a report out tonight. Here it is, May 14th. That is tonight. May 14th, headline, 5 former colleagues of Representative Cory Mills say he told them he became a Muslim. His girlfriend claims Blaze News report entirely untrue. But it goes on to lay out that apparently he got married by a Mohammed, and I don't know how you say his name.
Al-Hanuti.
Well, I knew you would know. Who is an unindicted co-conspirator in the 1993 World Trade Center bombing. Well, so is Assad Wahaj. Assad Wahaj is an unindicted co-conspirator in the World Trade Center who was speaking at the mosque down the road when Yasser Qadi was the imam, who's now in Plano, and he's had Siraj Wahaj there. So I'm guessing that these two characters must be running in the same orbit if they're both unindicted co-conspirators in the bombing of the World Trade Center. But why reportedly would Mills be married, have his marriage performed by this dude?
So my guess, well, first of all, I'm a little confused why he's married and has a girlfriend. So I don't know if that's a polygamous thing, which because of
or was that his old girl? His old girlfriend prior to marriage. I don't know that too. I don't understand, but yeah.
But most likely to be married by an imam is either, so in order for a Muslim woman to marry a man, he has to be a Muslim or the marriage is invalid. So I would suspect that the wife, girlfriend, whoever it is that he had this ceremony with al-Hanoudi was because she was a Muslim. And so in that ceremony, they would have performed the Shahada, his testimony of faith, if he didn't do it earlier, in order to perform that marriage ceremony. There is no way on God's green earth Hanoudi would marry them if he was not a Muslim. I promise you that.
Here the article says, at least one associate of Mills indicated that the congressman became a practicing Muslim after marrying Iraq native Rana al-Saadi,
There you go.
a conversion he emphatically denied in a conversation.
Okay. See, that makes perfect sense. So it's because of her that he had to go through the ceremony.
An Iranian activist, Sarah, how do you say her name, suggested to the Daily Mail, quote, that the claims made in Blaze article are entirely untrue, end quote. This was the first time since her domestic disturbance call that Mills' 27-year-old girlfriend has publicly announced their relationship. So I'm assuming that he was married at one point. Now he's not married to her. Now he has a girlfriend. I don't know. I don't really understand.
Well, it seems to imply he is still married, who is married to al-Saadi. So remember, Muslims can have 4 wives and concubines and possessions of the right hand. So that may be just
Well, you're right. It says right there.
Muslim.
In addition,
Sorry?
it says right there. You're right. In addition to confirming she was in a relationship with Mills, who is married.
Yes.
Wow.
Exactly.
Well, this is a congressman. Wasn't this guy a never Trumper, by the way, Cory Mills?
I believe so.
I think he was, right, Logan? I think he was a never Trumper. Is this the kind of thing that, as a national security expert, concerns you about our members of Congress?
Well, especially if he was hiding it, it's very concerning. And the fact that he would be married by an extremist. We have a term we used to call the godfathers of like Wahhabi Islam in America, and he's one of them. So that's not just your average imam, your cultural Muslim community down the street. I mean, he is a godfather of extremism in the United States. So for him to have been married by him says a lot about who Cory Mills would trust, his sacred union with. So that's a really troubling revelation if it's true.
We just had on Dave Gobbets, author of Muslim Mafia. I don't know if you ever got to know his son, Chris Gobbets. But Chris Gobbets grew the Sharia beard, infiltrated Muslim Brotherhood, came out with 12,000 documents, right? And then his dad, David, and Paul Sperry wrote the book Muslim Mafia. We used to produce Chris Gobbets' TV show here. So he's been here in our studio many times. Yeah. Spoke with us spoke out in the country with us several times. But Dave was just on tonight talking because we asked him, we paid his travel and expenses to go down and check out what's going on at Epic. And he's saying, look, this is promoting full-on Sharia, the various kinds of jihad. This is a group highly backed by Saudi Arabia's form of Islam, even though you got a Pakistani leader, which, of course, I want the audience to understand. While Yasir Qadhi is the resident scholar who's from Pakistan, there is a strong relationship, yes, between Pakistan and Saudi Arabia?
Absolutely. If we're talking on a theological level, the Saudis have been exporting Wahhabi Islam for decades. It happened throughout the 80s and 90s, throughout the 2000s. They are the main purveyors of this extremist interpretation of Islam all across the world. Pakistan, their original form of Islam was a mystical version of Islam that I'm very familiar with. That's what I was when I was a Muslim. And it was supplanted by this jihadi interpretation, largely by funding from the Saudis. And it especially happens in poor nations. So nations that don't have enough money to fund their own Islamic centers, they were getting millions, if not billions of dollars from the Saudis to build Islamic centers and stores and communities all across the world, including here in the United States.
So I guess, I know I've researched the Epic and Yasir Qadhi quite a bit, and I guess you're probably not shocked that Dave Gobbets, went down there for us. He's going to give us a signed affidavit and report, but we interviewed him about it tonight. I guess you're not shocked that they're promoting all the essence of full-on Islam, right?
Oh, absolutely. I'm not surprised at all. I think they're doing the public dance with Governor Abbott and all those investigations. But my prediction is they will pass their investigations because they will make sure on paper they don't violate the fair housing laws, that they don't engage in criminal activity. The whole thing about the funeral centers, they'll probably stop that until they get a proper permit. All of the things, they'll follow all of the rules, but internally be building a Sharia based system. I've told people my biggest concern is that people who live there will abide by their mediation requirements, which I'm sure they're going to have. They're going to manage their own kind of internal mediation and arbitration system, which they can put in the HOA documents, where they'll contract away their inheritance rights, their child support rights, if women and sometimes men decide to leave, especially people like me who left Islam for Christianity, would leave without their children. And that's just a travesty. We can't let that happen in the United States. And there's very little we could do about it based on the way the laws are now, unless we put some additional protections in place.
So you're basically saying they're going to set up their own court system.
Yes, like they do already. Those exist. This See, binding arbitration and mediation is a contract right. So we put in place all of these Sharia laws. If you remember, I think it started in 2017, but those are that you cannot run parallel court systems that contravene US law, but you can submit to private arbitration. Just like I'm sure you have contracts in your life with businesses or any other things that say you will not go to court if we have a dispute, you submit to binding arbitration. And it's in that binding arbitration that they'll be subject to Sharia. It's happened all over Europe as well.
Let's move to what I dealt with Annie Cyrus today, and that is President Trump putting out pictures of him with this gentleman right here. I don't know if I use the word gentleman, with this character right here. This is him all cleaned up with a suit on, and this is him when I guess he was a leader of what would be considered part of ISIS, right?
Jabhat al-Nusra. They claim to be fighting, but they were basically the alphabet soup of terrorism between Jabhat al-Nusra and Al-Qaeda, and then ISIS wanting to, be the preeminent actor in that space, but they were definitely coordinating.
So, look, we just report the truth, and we love President Trump. And
yes,
I'm so happy with so many of the great things he's doing. But like I told my audience, there can be times where we have to say, I wouldn't do that. I don't agree with that. But I can criticize or disagree with something. Like Ronald Reagan said, someone that disagrees with us, someone that agrees with us 80% of the time is not a 20% enemy. So I can disagree with stuff and still have great support and respect for him and appreciate a lot of the great things he's doing. So with that being said, I'm sure you're going to come down where my friend Annie comes down. She was just spitting nails this morning over this when I talked to her.
When I first saw those pictures and heard that he was lifting all the sanctions off of Syria, normalizing relations, I almost fell out of my chair. I just couldn't believe that he shook the hand of a terrorist. And let me tell you, we lost over 200 American children. So I'm not even talking just even Muslim kids. Everyday American children that went over to fight for ISIS, that got caught up in that jihadi craze and died. I mean, 200 of them, their whereabouts are still unknown because they're probably in a mass grave somewhere, or they blew themselves up and they have no ID tags. So not only that, but the dozens of our soldiers that lost their lives fighting the fighters under him in Jabhat al-Nusra, bombing the trade routes and other routes where our soldiers were. It's just, honestly, it's an affront to the blood, sweat, and toil that went into that long battle in Iraq that continues to rage. And I totally get what he wants to accomplish. So he says, I advocate commerce over chaos, tech over terrorism. These are great goals, but you have to understand the fundamental nature of Islamism. There is no peace with Islamism. Their ideology is about destruction of our civilization. And for decades, I fought this fight in the US government, and I made very little headway because this is not something that started with him. The neocons put forward the same thing. The atheists in the State Department put through the same thing, that if we just give them economics, if we just develop them, if we give them freedom, they will give up these evil ways. And it never happens. Look at Hamas. They were given independence, the right to rule over Gaza in 2015. And what did they do with the money and aid? They did not develop their society. They built underground tunnels to attack Israel. So these groups don't moderate. And I think the problem is that the president is not, he's not an ideologue. So he doesn't believe in the power of beliefs. And he said, quite frankly, explicitly, a quote, he doesn't believe in eternal enemies. But as Christians, as people who understand God's word, God's world is binary. You believe and you don't believe. If you do not believe in the Lord and follow the Lord, you're following your father, the devil. And so we are eternal enemies. And the problem is, how do we negotiate, coexistence in light of that relationship? But I think making friends with a terrorist is not the way to do it.
Yeah, that's a pretty straightforward statement that I think all of us could understand, right? And yet I wonder how many American soldiers tonight that lost colleagues or who are missing an arm or a leg.
Yes.
How are they feeling tonight when they saw that picture? Particularly
I
when they were
imagine,
fighting that man's soldiers.
I would imagine devastated. It is really just like my heart broke watching the withdrawal from Afghanistan, thinking, oh my goodness, I spent time in Afghanistan, all of the effort, the money, the toil, the loss of life that was, just the families that were destroyed. The American families were destroyed for 3-4 tours of duty throughout Afghanistan. And then we just leave in that disaster and hand it back over to the Taliban. And we're doing the same thing. Jabhat al-Nusra, Ahmed al-Shara, is no different than the Taliban. In fact, he's worse. In my opinion, he's worse. And then President Trump says, I did this, Prince Abdullah, what I would do for you. He has a very close relationship with the royal family of Saudi and with Qatar. And then he says it was also influenced by Erdogan. Well, everybody knows Tayyip Erdogan is building a neo-Ottoman empire. So these three people, these three leaders do not have our best interests at heart. I understand the need for trade, for commerce, for development, but Qatar is the single largest foreign donor to our college campuses. Look at the mayhem on our college campuses. Where does that come from? Who's funding those groups?
So the anti-Semitism, the keffiyeh wearing students, Qatar's funding that.
Well, I can imagine they spent over $6.8 billion at our universities, and everybody says, how do they all have matching outfits? How do they all know the same talking points? Why do so many people show up? Where do they get the tents? Where is all that coming from? And also the sentiment, the anti-Jewish sentiment of these kids, like who's teaching that? Where is that getting indoctrinated? It's happening at these, Middle East Studies Institutes. And people have been, if you remember the book, Ivory Tower in the Sand, people have been reporting about the demise of Middle East studies across U.S. universities for years. And this is just another indication of it. And the more we normalize that behavior, the more our society collapses. And we cannot allow that. So it is a destruction of our way of life.
What do you think Pete Hegseth is thinking of this? Didn't he just have a tattoo put on his arm that says kafir on it? Kafir? Explain to our audience what that means.
Kafir is the unbeliever. It's what the jihadists, for the most part, because the average Muslim, remember, my entire family is Muslim. I am not trying to say that every Muslim is a terrorist. There are wonderful, everyday Muslims in the United States and around the world. We're talking about Islamists who believe that, jihad is a way of life, that believe that the Quran literally says to kill the Christians and the Jews, and that's what's needed today. So we're distinguishing that political extremist interpretation of Islam, and that's what they call non-believers, as kafirs. And so it's a derogatory term, and I guess he put it on as a badge of courage that, sure, call me a kafir, call me whatever you want. And I wonder how much he knows about this issue. I was considering, when I saw this today, Trump's inner circle, and I thought, oh my goodness, who there really understands the jihadist threat.
What about
And
Sebastian Gorka? Doesn't he get
okay,
it?
so that's what I was going to say.
I mean,
I think literally he's the only one.
I talked to him last week. I mean, we were at the White House, and I talked to him last week on the front lawn as he walked by. I stopped and introduced myself and talked to him for a second. So he would get this, right?
I know for a fact. I mean, I've worked with him for 20 years, so I know Sebastian gets it. But imagine he's a lone voice in a room full of 20 people that are just saying, no, this is really good. And, very few people like to oppose Trump, and he really believes in this, and he has these long-standing relationships with these royal families. I believe that hill was too big to mount, to cross over. So I can't imagine that he won that debate.
So in President Trump's mind, so basically what we have here is President Trump doesn't understand Islam, is what you're saying.
Yes.
And
fundamentally, I don't think he gets religion, the power of religion.
He probably doesn't know what takia is.
No, I don't suspect he does.
Explain that to our audience knows, but for those who maybe are new who don't know, what is that?
So taqiyya is a belief by the Islamists that because we're in Jahiliyyah, the time of ignorance and war, so there's Dar al-Islam and Dar al-Harb. So Dar al-Harb is the abode of war. So everything outside of Saudi airspace is the abode of war. And so in that abode of war, you can engage in any kind of behavior you want. So that's why they were saying, remember the 9/11 hijackers were going to strip clubs and things like that. They were saying that that's basically the result of this taqiyya, where they could hide their true intentions until the time is appropriate. And I just think for most of Trump's relationship with these rulers, it was about business. It was about building and developing, and those relationships didn't extend to the issues of religion. And so I think it's just, and I think so it's not top on his priority. And like I said, his quote was, "I don't believe in eternal enemies." And so that statement just indicates that there is this kind of optimistic view of the eventual peace that can be brought between Islam and the West. And quite frankly, that's just unrealistic.
Now, let's talk about where you think this is headed. I had on Shahram Hedieh. I don't know if you know, I know you know Shahram. I don't know if you know my friend Usama Dakdok, born and raised in Egypt.
No.
Speaks Arabic. He translated the Quran from Arabic into perfect English. He was born and raised in Egypt. His daddy was a Baptist preacher, pastor, born and raised in Egypt. And they burned down all of his churches. Muslim Brotherhood did, eventually destroyed them all. He lives in the U.S. He's worked with us for years. But I had them on yesterday, I think it was. And Shahram was very clear to say, look, the Abraham Accords is a political and a religious document. And he said, as a Christian, I have a big problem with the Abraham Accords. How do you feel about the Abraham Accords? And as someone that goes to a church where you are taught Bible prophecy, how do you think, when you put on your eschatology hat, your end-time Bible prophecy hat, how do you think this is setting the stage for some kind of agreement, whether it's the Abraham Accords, the Oslo Accords, all these different accords? Because the Bible seems to imply that a world leader steps on the stage, Antichrist, and confirms these. The wording seems to be, scholars say, that they're already written. They just haven't really been put into practice. Is Donald Trump, without knowing it, is he setting the stage for the fulfillment of Bible prophecy?
1 Thessalonians 5:3, for when they say peace and safety, then sudden destruction comes upon them, as labor pains upon a pregnant woman. So the Ezekiel 38 battle also talks about this time of peace that precedes the Great War. That's what came to my mind after watching this. I was like, oh goodness, this is setting us up for the end times. And I don't think that's President Trump's goal at all. I just think he's just playing into it. As the Lord has said throughout the Old Testament and the New Testament, he turns the kings and the rulers in his hand. He is ultimately in control. So he can motivate them. Like, remember how he said he hardened Pharaoh's heart. So it is all in the hand of our great God and our Lord and Savior for things to play out as they intend. So as Christians, we have peace in knowing that the Lord is returning, and this is just going as planned. So there's no reason for us to get overly anxious and afraid of it, because it's going exactly as it's been prophesied.
So you, like me, and many of our viewers and other friends, believe we are on the fast track for Bible prophecy. The stage is being set for that to eventually, start to be fulfilled. We're in the preparatory phase right now. So you believe that God allowed the election of Donald Trump for many reasons, maybe to give us a reprieve, to keep us on the airwaves longer,
give us a revival,
right,
bring people to repentance,
right. But it also could be because God is using guys like Donald Trump to set the stage for what is yet to come. And this could mean that Donald Trump actually looks back and says, well, I wasn't wanting to set the stage for that, right?
Could possibly be if he even believes that,
right.
If he even believes in Bible prophecy.
Well, he's surrounded by people that know it.
Yep, exactly.
He is.
Exactly.
I think yeah. And I know that I have a friend of mine who's, or I shouldn't say a friend of mine. Yeah, well, I do. I have a very good friend of mine whose son-in-law is a White House attorney. And that's a Messianic Jewish friend, very big Messianic Jewish friend of mine, whose son-in-law is Messianic Jewish, is an attorney in the White House. I know there are people on that White House staff that believe the way we do. I really do. Whether they have the chance to ever visit on these issues with President Trump, I don't know. But I would like to ask him, do you ever, and I don't know how he'd answer it. I think I do. But I would like to ask him, do you realize that God is using you to set the stage for Bible prophecy to be fulfilled? I would like to ask him that question just to see how he'd respond.
It'd be fun. I wonder if somebody at some point will ask, because I think if we see this kind of overarching Middle East peace, I think most of us will start to get very afraid. I mean, because it is a sign of great tribulation to come. So for me personally, I'm pre-trib. I'm looking for the rapture.
Me too.
So I hope not. I hope not to be here.
Yeah.
But it would definitely be a scary turn of events, even though outwardly to the rest of the world, it will look great. So there's a lot of people rejoicing at this. Oh, finally, someone who's going to bring Middle East peace. And I said to myself, no, you don't really actually want that, because especially not on these terms. But the question is also, in the short term, what does that mean for us here in the United States? Does that mean more epic developments? Does that mean more, Muslim-only cities being built? Does it mean our college campuses are going to get crazier? Even if we see a downtick in terrorism, we have to remember the most dangerous part of Islamism is the civilizational jihad. It is what they do to our kids. It's what they're doing to the schools. It's what they're doing in the neighborhoods, on the city councils. And even if no bombs go off, that threat still looms. And the closer we get to these Gulf notorious exporters of extremism, I think the worse it gets for us here.
Mm-hmm. You probably don't know, there's this guy named Justin Peters. He loves to go after the charismatics. He loves to go after the word of faith people. I don't believe in word of faith theology. I have plenty of my friends that are charismatics and Pentecostals. I love them to death. There's some of them are the greatest soul winners and evangelists I know, and prayer warriors. So you have a lot of friends that are Pentecostal or charismatic. But I don't agree with word of faith theology. And most of my Pentecostal charismatic friends don't agree with word of faith theology either. But this Justin Peters guy loves to go after Benny Hinn and Kenneth Copeland and all those guys. But we actually played a video of him tonight with Dave Gobbets where he is saying Islam is not a threat to the church. Is Islam a threat to the church in America?
To the real church? No, we should be a threat to it.
But is it a threat in, you mentioned city councils, you mentioned in the ways that they can start to put shackles on our radio stations and our ability to, well, even interview you. Because I'm afraid we're going to end up like the UK pretty soon, and I'm going to be limited with what I can say. And I'm on 74 terrestrial radio stations every day too, so the FCC can control that.
Yes.
So from that standpoint, when I say the church, I mean Christians, ecclesia, called out ones. Can Islam be a threat to us?
So the problem is the ecclesia, the church, is not operating as it should. Because if we were bold and courageous, if we were preventing selling hundreds of acres to Sharia cities, if we were winning in the schools, if we were standing in solidarity with the Jewish kids on college campuses, imagine if every frat boy was out there on the street saying, you know what, get out of our campus because we're going to protect these Jewish students. If we were really operating as the church, we wouldn't have this problem. But when we sit back and rely on government to solve our problems, that's why we're losing. So if every Christian were to stand up and be like, you know what, I'm not going to allow this in my town, and they would go to the school boards, they would run for city council, but we're so afraid of it saying, oh, we can't mix religion and politics. Everything about our religion is politics. Preserving our way of life is about politics. So that's why I put that caveat that if we were the real church, if we were operating in spirit and in power, they would not be a threat to us. But because the majority of American Christians are basically either not practicing, not believing, or not courageous, that's why we're in this problem.
Mm-hmm. And of course, all this came up when James White was doing an interfaith dialogue in my backyard right here with Yasser Qadi. And then all of his friends came to his defense saying, oh, this is not a big deal. This is evangelism. His years of being a faithful apologist, he gets a pass for sitting with a Jew-hating, Holocaust-denying, Hitler-defending, jihadi-preaching imam. Islam is not a threat to the church. Don't worry about what Brannon says. And I'm saying, excuse me, when they get to the upper house and they start shutting down your Christian radio stations, when they start, fully implementing what they want, don't come crying to me to protect you or want to tell your story, because you're the ones that said they weren't a threat.
Right. And so that's the problem, is because it's this weird arrogance. And you know what? I saw this throughout the national security apparatus in the United States. Every time I talked about the threat of Saudis and of terrorism and of jihadis, they would always say to me, oh, please, what are guys with a bunch of towels on their head and sandals on their shoes going to do to the American military? It's that attitude that gets us in trouble. Oh, we're not afraid of Islam. What is Islam going to do to us? That is what makes it basically paralyzes the church from standing up, because you keep saying, say again?
I said, thank you, because these people that defended James White and Yasser Qadi in 2017, when he had the mosque down the street and did this interfaith dialogue in my backyard, Yasser Qadi is now building a 402-acre compound. And now all of a sudden, now they want to talk about it, some people. But I'm like, wait a minute. I showed tonight on TV where we started talking about Yasser Qadi in 2010. And and who was the biggest one attacking me? Christians and Christian pastors. Well,
it's such a travesty. It really is.
Don't complain to me when they're marrying off your kids, when your girls in your church are marrying these guys and they're walking off.
I have families that I counsel for that exact problem all over the world and throughout the United States that call me saying, what do I do? My daughter wants to marry a Muslim. And we go back, we talk about the history, we talk about where the relationship started. And it often starts with this idea that I just wanted to be nice. I just wanted to be welcoming. We tried to be loving. And she ended up converting to his religion instead of him coming to ours. And I mean, I've done the exact opposite. I told my daughter she wanted to date a Palestinian, and I said, absolutely not. He will not be welcome in this home. If I see him, I will tell him that he is not welcome anywhere near my daughter. I said, and I mean, people like shocked. How could I say that? And I was like, because if my daughter came home and said, you know what, I want to have a baby and I'm not married, I would stop her from doing that too. I would do anything in my power to protect my child. If she wanted to be a drug addict, if she wanted to do anything that was going to lead to sin and destruction, I would do everything possible to stop it. And so the problem is we don't have that kind of bold faith in a large part of our country, and everything is about the loving Jesus, the sweet Jesus. But what about this? What about the Savior Jesus with a robe dipped in blood? Nobody wants to talk about that Jesus.
Who by the way, in the Battle of Armageddon, his white robes are going to be covered in blood.
Exactly.
I mean, he's going to be wielding a sword, and woof.
Exactly. So nobody wants to talk about that Jesus, but
That's
everybody
right.
wants to talk about like Christmas Jesus,
Yeah,
and
that's right.
Easter egg Jesus.
Yep. Tell me, what do you think President Trump is doing, though, when it comes to Benjamin Netanyahu? What do you think he's doing when it comes to Iran? Is he, in his mind, is he thinking, okay, I'll get Syria to cooperate with me. I'll get them on my side to go against Iran. I'm going to work with Saudi Arabia here. They're going to bring money. I also can maybe use some of their military bases to land if necessary, if we have to strike Iran. Is he, from his pragmatic standpoint or from his national security and economic standpoint? I want to mostly focus on the national security part. I think I get the economic part. Billions and billions of dollars, buy this, here's billions, put 20 billion to AI and energy infrastructure. I get that. But from the military standpoint, is he trying to line up something here, not only to get the Abraham Accords, but to bring all these Muslim nations together to sign the Abraham Accords and go down in history as the guy that did this, that Carter tried it, Clinton tried it, I don't know how much Obama tried it, but certainly he wants to go down in history. And by getting even the, quote, extremist Syrian president on his side and moderating him in some ways, trying to control him, put him on a leash, bring him to heel, then maybe I can get others to follow suit and we can get this deal done.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And there's this obsession in our national security apparatus that stems again back to the neocon, to the George Bush Jr. days of this obsession with Iran. And I don't think that's coming only from Israel. I think that's internally, that if we solve the Iran problem, all of our problems go away. Again, that is really misplaced it's neglecting all of the terrorism and the destruction that's coming from the Sunnis. And it's this overemphasis on just isolating Iran and then our problems are going to be solved. It's not going to solve the problems. The enemy of my enemy is not my friend. It's a different enemy. Mm. And so I think we're just strategically trying to align all of these Sunni powers and then, okay, we're going to have them make peace with Israel. And then this will isolate Iran, decrease their power. Maybe the mullahs will fall. I'd be the first one that's ecstatic that the mullahs will fall in Iran because I want to go back and visit. So I would be ecstatic, but I don't think we want to do it at the cost of just our integrity and our dignity and having the long game of protecting our civilization as well.
Do you think, in closing, that eventually Israel will strike Iran? And do you think America will take part in that?
I think the way this is lining up now with these latest developments, I think they're trying to squeeze Iran out to avoid maybe military strikes, that maybe the mullahs will collapse from economic pressure and just being so geopolitically isolated that they could impose a coup or, kill people strategically that are in the leadership, and that it will fall because, the Iranian people have been trying to revolt forever, but nobody ever supports them. So right. I think with the support from Western and even Gulf nations to overthrow the mullahs, maybe an easier strategy, but I guess it remains to be seen.
So that's what President Trump's trying to do then, too. He's trying to get all these Islamic nations to get on the same page, benefit from peace, economics, cooperation, and then say, but if you want all the peace and the cooperation and the money and all that we can work together to do, you got to stop Iran. You got to join us in telling Iran, we're not buying from you, we're not assisting you, we're going to isolate you, and then they collapse from within.
Exactly.
And from the standpoint of someone like Donald Trump, that seems like a win. That seems like a natural deal to go make, right?
Yes.
But he's not looking at it through the lens of Islam. So he doesn't realize these are people that sign deals that don't follow through, right?
Well, no, they'll follow through on selling you airplanes and buying your airplanes and selling you oil, and they'll follow through with funding your universities. But meanwhile, everything they do theologically, ideologically, is with the goal of collapsing us. That's what they don't.
So in other words, that's a great point. So in other words, sure, we'll take that deal. We'll buy from you. We'll fund this. We'll fund that. And they're still waging jihad. It's just cultural jihad.
Yes. Exactly.
And they would rather do cultural jihad, would they not, than to blow up jihad?
Absolutely. So much easier. That's the strategy of the Muslim Brotherhood. I mean, Qatar is the state sponsor of the Brotherhood. I mean, they're all very supportive of the Brotherhood. That's what Al Jazeera was. It was created by the Brotherhood. So they much prefer the civilizational jihad.
Well, they say that in their manual. You know, we're going to get American. We'll get them to destroy their own country by their own house by their own hand.
Exactly. Exactly. Look at our college campuses. I think that's the best evidence. Did anybody ever think they would see 1,000 kefayas screaming, from the river to the sea, death to the Jews at Harvard?
After October 7th? After October 7th?
After October 7th. I mean, it's mind-blowing. It's mind-blowing to me.
Well, we're really looking forward to having your full presentation and testimony at our Thursday night, October 2nd, Worldview Foundation banquet. I hope everybody get their tickets at worldviewstore.com, worldviewstore.com, and resurrectministry.com is her website, resurrectministry.com. It's so interesting because I was on the phone with Annie when I saw that picture this morning. I called Annie, and then I laughed and said, Annie, one of my friends just texted me, and she was the next one I was about to call. So literally, I called her, and I thought, after her, I'm going to go to Hedieh. And boy, you text me before I could even call you or text you. You just like you read my mind.
I love it. I love it. That's great.
Well, you're welcome to text me anytime about stories that are breaking. That you have a full platform here, and our audience always appreciates your expertise, but also your Christian worldview.
Thank you. Thank you. I so appreciate being here with you.
And we'll do it again. Resurrectministry.com, folks. Resurrectministry.com. All right, guys, I want you to go back here. Worldviewtube.com/sponsors. Last week when we went to D.C., I took my satellite phone with me. If I go out of town, I take my satellite phone. Okay? I don't know what's going to happen, and I want to be able to communicate if the cell towers go down, power goes out. I took the ability to charge it, a little solar charger, and I took my satellite phone. I also have their solar generators, and they have all kinds of solar generators. Again, I think you need to use the 866 number for this because you want to ask all the right questions. 866-738-3224, 866-738-3224. I would call them when it comes to the generator so you get the right one for you. Okay, I have the Delta Echo 400, okay? But whether it's satellite phones, whether it's the Faraday bags, whether it's the Bivy, go back to that. The Bivy, that's here on the satellite phone section. This allows you to compose a text on your cell phone, but it goes from your cell phone to the Bivy and then to a satellite and then down to your family member that has a Bivy. So even if the cell towers were to go down, you could still text. So even if you don't want to buy a satellite phone, which why wouldn't you? The satellite phones are free. And you sign up for one of their very reasonable monthly plans. This is their satellite phone right here. Let me grab it if I can. And all you do is open up the phone, turn it on, you have to be outside, acquire a satellite, and then make your call, okay? The satellite phones are free, and you sign up for one of their very reasonable monthly plans, okay? But if you don't want to get a satellite phone, you do have the option of getting a Bivy. That way you just use your existing cell phone, even if the cell towers are down, you could still use your cell phone to compose a text and then send it to the Bivy, which goes to a satellite down to your family member that has one. So at least you're communicating. And you can get a discount for 2 or 3. All of this is at worldviewtalk.com, worldviewtalk.com, all right? Definitely check all that out, worldviewtalk.com. Also, don't forget about the water purifiers. We love our filtered water. This is the water we drink. This is the water we give Dolly, worldviewwater.net. This is the one I have under my kitchen sink. This is the one I have in the shower head, this bottom one here, far right, okay? And this is what it takes out, all of these toxins, unless, of course, you like drinking toxins, which I know you don't. This is a great, great filter. I highly recommend it, worldviewwater.net. Or you'll find it at worldviewtube.com/sponsors or worldviewwater.net. Again, worldviewwater.net. net. All right. All of these are over there at worldviewtube.com/sponsors, worldviewtube.com/sponsors.